Welcome, Wargamers. Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and I'm going to talk about my favorite model. Period. That's it. My favorite model. No one's been able to beat it. I think it was just over like a year ago that the Hellbringer Drake for Bellum's Wargames Conquest, Last Argument of Kings, was previewed, and we first saw a glimpse of this guy, and I was just in love. I was absolutely smitten. And after some production delays and that kind of stuff, everyone had them. Finally, the model arrived, and I was so excited about it. I wanted to do a review, just like I did for the Centaur Avatara, talking about the unit as a model, like physical model that you build, and then exploring its stats and how it can be used in the game. That's what we're going to be doing today, and if you would like to join me with that, please buckle in. And if you're going to make any purchases for Conquest or this unit, you can save a bunch of money by using my affiliate link in the description down below. It goes a very long way to supporting me as a content creator and the channel in general. A huge heartfelt thank you to all the people who have used that link before. It really is life-changing stuff. So let's start with a basic look at what kind of model we're talking about. This is how the Dweghom Hellbringer Drake presents itself on its page. As you can see, it's going to come with one plastic miniature. It does have an alternate head. I built the alternate head compared to this one here. I'll show you it off in a second. And 3 riders. So you have one cannon guy on each side of it, and then, of course, the leader who's on top just pointing at enemies like, "Go forward and let me hit them with my sword." And then the command card, which is what you use to play Conquest, where you basically determine what order units are going to activate, and then you flip the card, and that's how they do. You don't actually need the command card. You can definitely just come up with something else. As long as you and your opponent know what it's representing, you're good to go. Looking at some of the other shots here, I have some better pics of him on the side. You can see he's a stocky little dude. Here's a good shot of the cannon wielders here on the side, the way they're just rocking those massive cannons. Here's the back side of it. You can see there's no cockpits on, there's no closure of the cockpits, my gosh. They just sit in there. They're kind of like holding and praying over the cannons themselves, kind of directing the magma that's flying out of them. And here's another good one right here in the eye. This guy's pointing at us like we're next. I loved this model from these pictures. I knew there was going to be an alternate head, but I didn't see a good picture of it. And so I can show that to you now. Here we are at the downward cam. I finished building mine the other night. Here are the 3 riders, I should say. The 2 gunmen are basically just kneeling down. It almost looks like they are, like I said, almost praying into the devices, but I don't know. And then here's our, let me hit them with my sword guy. He's going to stand right on top. One thing I do want to say about this kit is if you do buy it, because it costs a pretty penny, $124. It costs less with the code in my description, but whatever that final price ends up being, I highly recommend you don't glue him down right away. The reason is there's actually an alternate kit you can buy for I think it's $26 or something dollars. Don't quote me on that. But basically there's a way to put a leader on top of this thing instead of just a crewman. So this guy doesn't have any special rules. There's a way to put a sorcerer on top of him. It's like a separate kit, but it will require you to have him magnetized or just build the alternate way. That's up to you. I'm going to magnetize mine, so I'm waiting till my sorcerer comes in, but yeah, that's the basics of it. So here is our actual Hellbringer Drake rather. Sorry. Here's the alternate head you can see. And I'll do a side-by-side comparison here with the other one. Let me find a better pic. Okay, camera 1, camera 2. See how the bottom jaw of the other monster, basically they mounted a huge bumper to it on the top and the bottom. Oh, there I am. Let's see. And with this one, they left the mouth open. And one of the things that I really liked about it was this ridge that goes up the top. It has a cool dino look to it, but it's a ram essentially on this thing. I also really like the way that they went with covering up the eyes, because for a lot of battle mounts, eyes are covered for cavalry and that kind of stuff. It's pretty normal. The cannons I found to be pretty sweet. There is one thing I want to let you know as far as building this goes. The instructions were not the most helpful. I'm going to just be honest there. When they showed you how to put the cannons together, when you look at the sprue, it's just there's 2 halves of a cannon just sitting there, so I just clipped them off, cleaned them up, glued them together. What they don't tell you is that each one of these is different. This little nubbin right here, it was actually supposed to go on the inside of this cannon here, because then the little nubbin goes inside of a hole that's inside the body. Now, I didn't know that. This piece has both the nubbin sides on each side, so I clicked that one in. I was like, this is easy. Went to go do the other one, and I was like, oh no. 'Cause by that point, they were dry. There was plastic glue. There's no undoing this. So it's fine. I was actually able to get it mounted just as it would be if it had the little nubbin available. Like, I'm not sure how well it shows up because this camera's at an angle. I can't prop them straight with this tail, but the two I actually got to level out and made sure that they look pretty good. It's totally doable if you make that mistake. The only thing you're going to see is this little nubbin here on the side, and honestly, there's so much muffler pipes and all this junk, it doesn't really stand out. So that's my only word of warning to you. Yeah. Beyond that, I just love the way it looks like that. It's an impressive profile. So he has these like Mad Max mufflers, gouts of flames coming out the top. Lots of mufflers coming out the sides of or vents, I should say, for the magma cannons. And yeah, the only real option as far as the lizard goes is the head. Like that's it. I think they didn't want to do anything with the feet because that would require kind of like manipulations, because he dominates this base. Let me get this for you. That's our base we're working with. I mean, look at this thing. You can barely see it under there. I mean, like, model overhang is a thing, and it always will be, but I just thought that was particularly funny. Yeah, beyond that, I had no problems building him. I got it done in a single night. What else? Yeah, really just the instructions when it came to the cannon. Everything else, as long as you let the pieces dry separately when you go to combine them, it's very simple. Like, I think they have you start off with the little podium that he's on, and then attach the cannons, and then that whole apparatus locks onto the lizard. So you can build them in sub-assemblies as much as you want. For me personally, I didn't mind just building all of this and painting it, and then having the drivers all be sub-assemblies. Like, I'll just paint them separately and then glue them on. So that was my thought. But I gotta say, I freaking love this kit. This is... It's so much, like, compared to... Let me grab another model here. Here's a Boar Rider from Age of Sigmar. If you want to put these two next to each other, this thing is colossal. I guess I'm trying to get where it's level with the feet, right? Oh my god, I love it. He's just a bowling ball size. He's perfect. So that's it for the model, as far as the actual product itself and my experiences building it. But let's talk about what they actually do on the tabletop. So here we are at their entry over on the Parabellum website. They have a great little list builder and reference tool and all that kind of stuff. So the Hellbringer Drake entry might seem a bit barren. The one thing I will say that I'm not the biggest fan of is that he is a $124 retail model who costs 180 points in the game. Like, he is not expensive. So, you know, if you're a madman, you could load up a list with, I think I played a list with 3 of them, I think, on TTS. It was actually quite fun. But you're really not going to want that. The truth is, the Dweghome as a faction are not going to be this artillery masterclass that you have. That's going to go to other sub-factions that have a lot more in terms of ranged combat. The Dweghome really don't. This is going to be somewhat of a centerpiece. I could definitely see 2 of them in a list, but not beyond that, really, because it's not what the army is the best at. It's the best at being defensive, on getting objectives, on grinding your opponent out through melee combat. This is just some gun support, and that's exactly how I view them. And if I'm kind of give a thesis statement on these guys, it's adding meaningful ranged combat to a melee army. It's not a way to have a ranged army. It's a different kind of take on that. So if we're looking at the rules here, we see that he is a monster. Of course, that makes perfect sense. His class type is medium. That's terrific, because the the giant avatar monster, Abomination, that's what he is heavy. And like, it's cool that he comes in, he's so fast, but man, being medium means this guy is possibly coming onto the board turn 2. And there are a few ways to make sure that pretty much happens nonstop. And that's just a fantastic thing. 180 points we already discussed. Again, he doesn't do, like, I feel like other units do more to fill up a roster than that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just an expensive model for 180 points. I would just give it some more rules and some more points and mellow out a little bit. That's my opinion, but whatever. We'll go through the stats here. Movement of 8. That is utterly terrific and unheard of in a faction of Dweghom. They're in, what is it? Infernal Automata? Is that what they're called? Inferno Automata, not Infernal. They are also very speedy and they are also light, but these guys can actually cap an objective because they are medium, and that's terrific. So they got a movement of 8, a volley of 2, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Volley is going to be their ranged attack. Remember, in Conquest, you want to have equal to or lower on your dice. So dice rolls of 1 or 2 are going to be successful. Clash value of 1, this is not a melee beast. Not at all, in any way, shape, or form. My understanding is he will get charge attacks, but, you know, at clash value 1, they're not going to do a whole lot. He has 8 attacks total. So like he can toss dice, but they're not great attacks. They're not very meaningful. There is a what's the other kind of Drake? There is a melee version of him that is Ironclad Drake that is much more in line with what you would expect a giant monster. Think of him as a giant gun, but not a monster, like no matter how he looks. For his wounds, he has 12, which I like. I like models with some staying power. Resolve 3, Defense 3, and Evasion 2. Evasion 2 is fantastic. There's always going to be some way for him to meaningfully try to mitigate damage. As far as his special rules, where we're going to spend most of this, Strong Arm. This regiment never counts the target of their volley action as obscured due to long range. So, normally, when you're shooting with your barrage weapon, so his is barrage 20 inches. Normally, if it's, 10 plus inches away, 10.1 inches and higher away, you would reduce the number of shots that you make by half because you're long range obscured. Well, other things can obscure him, but range won't. And so as long as there is a direct line between the Hellbringer Drake and its target, you're going to be firing at its maximum, which is 10, which makes this a nasty gun. Like, it's not, given the range, in relevant to the faction, like the Dweghom don't have a lot of long-ranged attacks. This is terrific. As far as the other rules go, we have Armor Piercing 1, which means enemy regiments suffer a penalty to their defense against hits with this special rule, made during a volley or spell casting action, equal to the attribute. So it's Armor Piercing 1. So if his opponent has, say, a defense value of 3, it's going to go down to a 2, make it difficult for them to make the save. Again, Conquest, you want to have equal to or lower than. So that makes it much harder for them. Barrage 10, so he's getting 10 shots at volley 2. That's pretty cool. Cleave 1, which is essentially the exact same thing, but for melee. The difference is important for some units. For him, I just don't want him in melee. I'll be honest with you. He can have some melee capabilities if you're just end of the game trying to rush for an objective or something, but I am just not convinced. If you have a different experience, please let me know. Then we have Overcharge. This regiment may take a special Overcharge action in each of its activations. If it does so, place an Overcharge marker besides the regiment. When the regiment makes a volley action, you may discard any number of Overcharge markers. Each marker discarded in this way increases the number of shots in the volley by 2 and the armor-piercing attribute by 1. Should the regiment lack armor-piercing, it gains armor-piercing 1. So, for this example, it allows you, so say turn 1, he comes on the table, there's no targets in range. Instead of having a shoot be one of his actions, have Overcharge. So this way, when he does make it to the combat, you either have 1 or even 2 Overcharge markers. Then for each of those, you gain 2 shots, and they each go up by 1 armor piercing for each one. So essentially, if you came onto the board, your first action was a move, your second action was Overcharge. The next turn, you did the exact same thing. With an 8-inch move, you're still making it up the board faster than most of the units in your army. When you go to unleash that Hellstorm round 3 in this example, it's nasty. And that's round 3 of him being on the table, not round 3 of the game. So it gets really, really mean. So if you just pick a priority target, bank up your overcharge tokens for it, you can unleash some nastiness. And the last one here is Terrifying 1. Enemy regiments in contact with one or more of these stands with this special rule suffer a penalty to their resolve characteristic. So it makes people more scared. In addition, enemy regiments in contact with one or more stands with this special rule making a combat rally action, which allows you to reform your ranks if you're in melee, must roll a dice and compare it to their resolve characteristic. If the roll is equal to or less than their resolve, the combat rally action succeeds. If not, it fails and the regiment remains broken. So there's a lot going on there. Essentially, it's just if you try to mitigate losses through attrition, through like people running away, or if you try to rally your troops to not be broken mid-game, it's a penalty against that because he's just big and scary. Again, this is another example of I could see using him to rush into a combat late game when the gun is not nearly as much of a value, but you need to start pulling people off objectives, messing with their resolve and their ability to, mitigate being broken as a status is massive. So I could see him, like I said, as a late game objective rush, but I just don't see him as a frontline melee guy. And with all of that, we've discussed the Hellbringer Drake. It's not like the most massive of entries. You would expect there to be like all different kinds of options and stuff. It's like, no, man. He's 124 base. Again, I think it's 15% you save when you use the coupon in my description. But like at the end of the day, it's a very simple entry for a unit. Like he's a big gun. I would probably have him, the TTS games that I've played, I played that list. I had 3 of them, I think. Or it was 4. I believe it was 4. All Drakes all day. But essentially with those, I just kind of let him hang back behind the main line. I had cheap warrior units that didn't have any upgrades just to make them as cheap and bare bones as possible, moving up the board as a screen, and then just letting the guns just overlap each other as much as I could, overcharging when I could. And it just made everything kind of awesome. Again, this is not like a combined arms where you're going to these guys are not tanks. Your tanks are going to be something like your Hold Thanes or Dragon Slayers or something like that. This is a tool, which is it projects threat 20 inches out and allows you to really take out meaningful targets. If there is a regiment that has a hero in it that your opponent needs for specific synergies, this is where you want to do. This is the right amount of pressure to apply to those units. Anything beyond that is just extra. But friends, that is just my opinion. I gotta say, I am in love with this model. I am going to be at least getting one more. I know that because I like him. I've also considered getting a third and having, one permanently be a sorcerer and then 2 to fill out the rest of the roster. I'll see how I feel about that. It really depends on how hard I want to lean into tempered sorcerers as my general or warlord and that kind of stuff. But overall, I gotta say, it's an absolutely stunning model, and I will be doing another chat about it here once I get it painted. Let me ask you all this. Is there a Conquest unit or box or something that you would like reviewed and just kind of talked about? Leave in the comments down below. Thank you all so much. And another shout out, if you wouldn't mind using the affiliate link, it goes an immensely long way to helping me. If you have any questions or suggestions on other videos, leave in the comments. I'll chat with you there. Happy wargaming.